and never really created or opened a relationship with Jesus. He kept the purse, and so he was more involved with what was in the pocketbook instead of what was in his own heart. And he exits at this point, because these are some of Jesus' last words, and they are words of relationship. So Judas never heard those words while he was with Jesus. He won't hear those words in the last few statements of Jesus. Jesus, in his parting comments, says some very clear things. What is most clear about what Jesus has said is that they, whoever they are, will know you. Follow me because of your love for one another. That's how they're going to know that you are in the family of Jesus. So I have a question for you, and it's rhetorical. But Christians don't seem really to be known for loving each other. We have learned, I think, in our lives, that sometimes the denomination is more important than the faith. And so we have people who figure out what is different and make that what's important. So I'm not against denominations. That is not my message. What I am trying to speak to is really what unites us, not what divides us. So it is okay for us to have distinction and difference in the family of God. There's always going to be that. But it is when we make that distinction faith, because distinctions divide us. And Jesus didn't say, they're going to know you are my followers because some of you are Episcopalian, some of you are Baptist, some of you are Methodist, some of you are... What Jesus said is, they're going to know that you're my followers because you love one another. What unites us is far more powerful than whatever distinctions we have. And again, there's nothing wrong with distinctions. You know, heaven is like Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. And it's okay. Somebody likes raspberry swirl and I have to have, you know, chocolate wham wham bun slide. It's okay for distinction, but we're all ice cream. So part of this conversation is that we have to remember that what we really are is ice cream with distinction. What is it that unites you and I? It is these last words of Jesus. Love one another. Now, we're going to go talk about Peter's dream. Apocalyptic literature, which was a kind of a, for them, really popular way of discussing things. For us, it's a lot like science fiction. We use science fiction sometimes to speculate about reality or paint a vision of what the future might be or the way that it might have been. We have Peter, and Peter is hanging out with a bunch of the circumcised. And they are mad at Peter because he went to the uncircumcised and actually had a conversation and sat down with them. Oh, Peter, how you have fallen. We've known that you have been dull for many a time, but now you really have done it. You've gone and talked to them. And Peter, I love the way this is phrased in the Acts of the Apostles. And then Peter sat down. You can kind of hear this. Put it in your mind. Peter sat down and explained it to him step by step. Did you ever have that conversation with your mom or your dad? I'm going to explain this to you step by step. So here's Peter's dream. You know, I had this vision, and this blanket came down from heaven. And as I saw it come down, I saw all of these beasts, four-legged and reptiles, all of creation in front of me. From heaven, God's gift in front of me. And God said, Peter, go kill an animal. And Peter said, no, God, I don't eat things that are unclean. And God said to Peter, I'm going to paraphrase just a bit, who are you to tell me what's not clean? I'm God. And I just gave you this. So don't tell me that you can say what's clean and unclean. Oh, because God was explaining it to Peter, step by step. And he had to do it 3 times because Peter, he needed to make sure Peter got it. Thank you. You know, God has explained things to me many times, but Peter got it in 3, so we're thankful. You are thankful too that I don't have to tell you every time. Peter comes back, and he shares this vision with the circumcised. And all of a sudden they realize that the people that they have considered unclean, not as good, those folks have received the same blessing and gift that God has given the circumcised. Distinction, but still God's beloved children. They sat and said, okay, got it. And now we're going to talk about the revelation of John, to John. It's once again at the end time of what life is going to be when God's will is completed, totally fulfilled. What we know is that every tear is going to be washed away. All pain and all suffering. We are God's people. Who? All of us. Why? Because God said it. See, we can play denominationalism. God doesn't. But what about the Hindus? The blanket came down. All of Greek. What about the Buddhists? The blanket came. What about the, Muslim? The blanket came. What about people that don't go to church? The blanket. It is God's will that we understand that we are God's children, beloved children, all of us. All of us. Everybody. That is God's will. And Jesus says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's Greek for A to Z. There is not a way that you can talk about God between Alpha and Omega, A to Z, without speaking about Jesus. Again, the blanket came down, not just to Christians. Jesus reveals to us all people. That's what he says. All people. the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning of it and the end of it. We begin with Jesus announcing that God is with us and walking through all of the life of Jesus to hear about how he cared and loved his friends, his brothers and sisters, and how he died, and how in his death he taught us that God's love is so great that it reaches beyond death. Think of that. That is the resurrection. Jesus risen from the dead because of God's love. And that gift is given to us. Who? All of us. And I know that this is hard to believe. And I know that there are days that we calculate, well, I go to church all the time. Why not just me? That's just part of middle school. Who's in and who's out? We just can't play that game anymore. God is not in middle school. I mean, God is in middle school. You know what I'm saying? Everybody. Everybody. So this is what Jesus says. We're back to the gospel. You know, I'm going to go away a little while. You can't come with me right now. But while I'm gone, I'm going to give you my gift of the Spirit. It's the same Spirit that I'm going to give everybody. It's the Spirit that rests in me, and it's the Spirit of love. And people are going to know you, know me, because you love one another. Because you love one another. Nothing else. It's because you love one another. That's what we have to do between the beginning of our life and the end of our life. Our job, the essence of who we are, is to love one another. We don't always get it right. We have bad days. You know, what do I have to do today? I have to get up and love everybody. What do I have to do tomorrow? I have to get up and love everybody. What about Tuesday? I have to get up and love everybody. What about Wednesday? No, I'm taking the day off and I have to get up. No, on Wednesday I have to love everybody. That's what we have to do. If you want to know what God's will is for you in your life, I do. It's to love one another. That's all. They will know